People in Australia felt it first, while much of North America was still asleep. At about 3:30 p.m. local time, according to the Home Affairs Minister, a massive tech outage hit. Companies and organizations started reporting this, known as the blue screen of death. Computers went down and took tons of services with them, including banks and hospitals, and broadcasters off the air.
For our viewers who are tuning in, and as Tom said, this is an extraordinary situation. Our studio's down with this breach as well. When I call it a breach, though, it's not a malicious one.
Right, this wasn't a cyber attack. At 5:45 a.m. Eastern, the cybersecurity company CrowdStrike said an update to its software was to blame. A glitch in that software caused it to react badly with some Microsoft-based systems.
The problem with the CrowdStrike software is that when it stops working, the whole computer stops working, and the computer won't even turn on at this point. And not only does that mean you can't do any work, but it also means it's hard to fix the problem.
And as the hours went on, that problem got a lot bigger, because CrowdStrike is used by organizations around the globe. Fortune 500 companies, major banks, energy companies, airlines. And as the rest of the world started their day,
sir, if I am missing my US flight, Qatar flight, what will happen? What you will do?
That faulty update rippled across systems, causing outages almost everywhere, and disrupting everything from airports to 911 services.
So they're saying that they have a pan-India system outage at the moment, and that is also why they were not able to send out any information through either SMS or an email.
Die Folge ist, dass in
Officials in Europe were already getting a grasp on how bad the issue was. Germany's cybersecurity chief warned people it would be a long day. And in Paris, where the world is arriving for next week's Olympics,
arrived in Paris this morning and went to go get my accreditation validated, but been told no, pretty much.
So by the time North Americans woke up, the outage had been playing out for hours. And again, people couldn't even log into their computers. Several hospitals across Canada said they had to find workarounds to keep services going. There were lineups at the border and delays at the airports. American Airlines, United, Delta, and Porter all grounded flights.
We got here like 9:30 a.m. When we arrived, we were just told to come back at 12 because everything was down. So we've been waiting since 9:30.
And by this time, CrowdStrike had been doing damage control and trying to get things back online.
We've been on, with our customers all night and working with them. Many of the customers are rebooting the system, and it's coming up, and it'll be operational because of, we fixed it on our end.
But this wouldn't be an easy fix.
This is not something that can just be fixed with all the computers remotely over the internet. It's something that individual system administrators are going to have to fix one PC at a time.
And while services slowly started coming back in the afternoon, for some, it's still a waiting game.
So how does something like this happen? Let's get the perspective from Ritesh Kotek, a Canadian cybersecurity consultant and tech analyst. When you heard the news this morning and saw all these systems shutting down, what was your reaction?
My initial reaction is, what happened and how can this happen in the first place? Clearly, given the time of when we started hearing about the outages, that's usually when these massive updates happen at an enterprise level. That's because you have the least amount of users. So I kind of right off the bat thought, okay, it seems like maybe there's an update gone wrong, some sort of network issue, but how can this happen in the first place? Usually when you do these updates, they're tested. You use a sandboxed environment. It's not as simple as just hitting the update button. So when we started hearing about services going down, businesses being disrupted, my initial thought was, how could this happen and why was it not tested?
Okay, that was your initial thought. Hours have passed now, though I know we don't have very specific answers, but now as you look back at it, do you have any greater insight into how it wasn't tested properly?
We still don't know exactly why this bug impacted Microsoft users in particular. And these are endpoints, so your laptops, your computers, your virtual machines, or your servers that were impacted, and obviously the stuff that ran on it. Corporations couldn't function. We still don't know the exact from a technical perspective, but what we do know is very quickly a patch, so a remedy, a fix, was made available when the initial issue was discovered. So it was very quick. but to kind of reverse the updates, to roll back the clock, to get the new system and the new update up and running, to ensure that all the settings are correct. That has taken some time. There's still systems that are down. I'm sure there'll be multiple systems that'll come back online and be at 100% in the coming days. But that's kind of my initial thoughts with everything going on, and kind of what to make of this.
We all saw the impact it had on the airline industry, lots of delays and confusion at airports in Canada and particularly in the United States. And I thought that was interesting because the aviation industry is used to a really robust system for investigating its own failures. And when there is a failure in aviation, everybody within the industry learns about it and makes changes. What about in this industry, in software? Do you think the lessons that come out of this will be shared among other companies and other users to make it unlikely this will happen again in the future?
When it comes to diagnosing exactly what happened, we really have it down pat in the physical world. But when it happens in the virtual world with these types of updates, it seems like we still have a lot of work to do. And maybe one of the things coming out of this is how do we identify these issues, and how do we have a global response and even create a global standard to ensure that there's the appropriate business processes in place, that redundancies are built in, that it doesn't happen where one update ends up crippling entire sectors. And I think that this is one learning, essentially, lesson that needs to come out of this is how are we going to address not just this outage, but future outages, which are inevitable.
And so how confident are you, Ritesh, that these kinds of industry-wide changes will be made so we don't see stuff like this happening again?
I'm confident that there is going to be some changes that are going to come out of it. Clearly, having a global outage means that organizations suffer. The bottom line suffers. And I think when you start putting dollars and cents towards these types of problems, that we're going to start seeing some changes. But what are those changes? I think we got to break it up into two categories. The first one being technical, so ensuring that you have the right infrastructure in place. You don't have all your eggs in one basket. And the second being from a business standpoint, making sure that you have the right processes in place. So there's redundancy built in, that there's resilience built in, and you have some sort of continuity in place. And I think if those conversations start to happen, I'm pretty confident that this is going to be taken seriously. There'll be better information sharing, and we'll be able to address what's going to be inevitable, which are future outages.
It is a sobering reminder of how vulnerable so many of the things around us are to a bug in the system. Ritesh, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.